The story of the Crusades begins in an age of faith and fear, when religion was not merely a belief, but a way of life that shaped the destiny of nations. In the late 11th century, Europe was a fragmented landscape of feudal kingdoms, small wars, and competing lords. Yet beneath that chaos, there was a unifying force, the Christian Church. It bound together people of different tongues and territories under one spiritual authority, the Pope. And it was that same church that would call upon Europe to rise for a cause that would change the world forever, to reclaim the Holy Land from the Muslims. For centuries, Jerusalem had been a sacred city for Jews, Christians, and Muslims alike. To Christians, it was the site of Christ's crucifixion and resurrection. To Muslims, it was the place where Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven. By the year 1071, the balance of power in the region had shifted dramatically. The Seljuk Turks, a new and vigorous Muslim power from Central Asia, had seized control of much of the Middle East, including Jerusalem. Their rapid expansion posed a growing threat not only to the Byzantine Empire, but also to Christian pilgrims who journeyed to the Holy Land. In Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire, Emperor Alexius I Komnenos faced a crisis. His armies were weakened, his empire shrinking. The Seljuk Turks had crushed the Byzantines at the Battle of Manzikert in 1071, capturing much of Anatolia, once the empire's heartland. Desperate and isolated, Alexios turned to the west for help. His plea for assistance reached the ears of Pope Urban II in Rome, and with that, the spark that would ignite the First Crusade was born. When Pope Urban II spoke at the Council of Clermont in 1095, his words electrified Christendom. He called upon knights, peasants, and kings alike to take up the cross and march east to liberate Jerusalem from Muslim control. He promised spiritual rewards, sins forgiven, eternal salvation guaranteed for those who fought in the name of God. The crowd erupted, shouting, "Deus vult," God wills it. And so began one of the most dramatic and brutal episodes in world history. What followed was unlike anything Europe had ever seen. Tens of thousands of people, knights, nobles, farmers, monks, even women and children, set out on a journey that mixed piety with greed, devotion with destruction. For many, it was an act of faith. For others, it was a chance for adventure, wealth, and redemption. This blend of motives created an unstoppable wave moving toward the east, destined to leave both glory and tragedy in its wake. The early Crusaders marched across Europe, often leaving chaos behind them. Untrained mobs led by preachers like Peter the Hermit launched what became known as the People's Crusade. They massacred Jewish communities in the Rhineland, believing they were fighting God's enemies even before reaching the Holy Land. Most of these early crusaders perished before even crossing into Asia Minor, destroyed by hunger, disease, and Turkish armies. Yet the main forces of the First Crusade, composed of experienced knights and nobles, were still gathering. By 1097, the official armies of the First Crusade arrived in Constantinople. Emperor Alexios, wary of his new allies, demanded they swear loyalty and return any captured lands to the Byzantine Empire. The Crusader leaders, including figures like Godfrey of Bouillon, Raymond of Toulouse, and Bohemond of Taranto, reluctantly agreed. Their alliance was uneasy from the beginning, driven by mutual need rather than trust. The Crusaders crossed the Bosporus into Asia Minor, beginning a campaign of unimaginable hardship. They faced harsh climates, scarce food, and fierce Turkish resistance. Yet their faith and determination carried them forward. The Siege of Nicaea in 1097 was their first major victory, but the road ahead was long and perilous. As they moved deeper into Anatolia, the Crusaders faced ambushes and starvation, but they pressed on toward Antioch, a city whose capture would become one of the most traumatic sieges in medieval history. Antioch was a formidable fortress, surrounded by massive walls and defended by a determined Muslim garrison. The siege lasted nearly 8 months. The Crusaders suffered from hunger and disease, resorting to eating their horses and even rats to survive. Many began to despair, believing God had abandoned them. But in June 1098, through betrayal and cunning, the Crusaders managed to infiltrate the city's defenses and seize Antioch. Yet their victory was short-lived, as a massive Muslim army soon surrounded them in turn. In one of the most desperate moments of the First Crusade, the Crusaders claimed to have discovered a holy relic, the Lance of Longinus, the spear said to have pierced Christ's side. This miracle reinvigorated their spirits. With renewed faith, they charged out of Antioch and miraculously defeated the much larger Muslim force. For many, it seemed proof that God truly guided their swords. After their victory at Antioch, the road to Jerusalem was finally open. The surviving Crusaders, now reduced to a fraction of their original numbers, marched south through Syria, facing constant shortages of food and water. They were exhausted, sunburned, and scarred, but their resolve hardened as they approached their sacred destination. In June 1099, they stood before the walls of Jerusalem. After years of marching, they had reached the city that had inspired the crusade. The siege of Jerusalem was brutal. The defenders, mostly Fatimid Muslims, fought with courage and determination. The Crusaders built siege towers, scaling ladders, and catapults, desperate to breach the city's walls. On July 15th, 1099, they succeeded. When the gates fell, what followed was one of the bloodiest massacres in medieval history. The Crusaders slaughtered nearly everyone, Muslims, Jews, and even Eastern Christians, believing they were purifying the city in God's name. When the blood finally stopped flowing, Jerusalem was in Christian hands for the first time in centuries. The Crusaders wept and prayed at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, believing they had fulfilled a divine mission. Godfrey of Bouillon refused the title of king, calling himself instead the defender of the Holy Sepulchre. A new kingdom was born, the Kingdom of Jerusalem, the first of several Crusader states established in the Levant. The First Crusade had achieved what seemed impossible. A small, fragmented army from Western Europe had conquered the most sacred city in the world. But their victory came at a terrible cost. Tens of thousands were dead, entire cities destroyed, and deep divisions now separated Christian and Muslim worlds. The success of the First Crusade would inspire centuries of war, retaliation, and religious conflict. Back in Europe, the Crusaders were hailed as heroes. The Pope's call had proven that the Church could unite all of Christendom for a single cause. Pilgrims, traders, and new settlers began to travel east, bringing with them the culture and commerce of the West. Yet the Crusader states were fragile, surrounded by powerful Muslim neighbors, and dependent on reinforcements that rarely came. In the Muslim world, the fall of Jerusalem was a shock. It was seen as both a humiliation and a call to arms. Muslim chroniclers described the Crusaders as savage invaders who slaughtered the innocent and desecrated holy places. But in time, leaders would rise among the Muslims who sought not only revenge, but also redemption through holy war, what they called jihad. The First Crusade marked the beginning of nearly 2 centuries of struggle between East and West, between cross and crescent. It was a story of faith and fanaticism, courage and cruelty, heroism and horror. And while the Crusaders believed they were doing God's will, the wars they unleashed would reshape the medieval world in ways no one could have foreseen. As the dust settled over Jerusalem, both Christians and Muslims began to realize that this was not the end, but only the beginning. The holy city would become the center of an endless tug of war, a prize so sacred that neither side would ever willingly surrender it. Over the coming decades, the fragile Crusader kingdom would fight for survival, clashing with the rising power of Muslim warlords. Among those future leaders would emerge one of the most legendary figures of all, Salah ad-Din, or Saladin, the man who would one day reclaim Jerusalem for Islam. But before that day came, the Crusaders would build castles, carve out realms, and fight desperate wars of defense and ambition. The ideals of faith that had carried them to victory would begin to clash with the temptations of power, wealth, and politics. The holy mission would soon become something darker, a struggle for domination cloaked in the language of God. The Crusades were no longer a single event. They had become an era where faith met fury, and empires rose and fell on the tides of blood and belief. The fires kindled at Clermont would burn for generations, consuming both East and West in their holy flame. And as the 12th century dawned, the world waited for the next call to arms, a call that would once again send the armies of Christendom marching toward destiny. In the years following the capture of Jerusalem, the victorious Crusaders had carved out fragile Christian states across the Levant. These new realms, the Kingdom of Jerusalem, the Principality of Antioch, the County of Edessa, and the County of Tripoli, stood as lonely outposts of Western Christendom in a sea of Islamic power. At first, they flourished. Castles rose on hilltops, trade routes reopened, and Latin nobles ruled over cities filled with Eastern Christians and Muslims. Yet beneath the surface of these apparent successes, the Crusader kingdoms were always one breath away from destruction. Their survival depended heavily on reinforcements and supplies from Europe, which were slow to arrive. The Crusaders were vastly outnumbered and surrounded by enemies. The Muslim world, though temporarily divided between rival dynasties, the Fatimids of Egypt, the Seljuks of Syria, and various local emirs, began to recognize the invaders as a threat that could not be ignored. In time, Muslim unity would return under a leader unlike any the Crusaders had yet faced. But before that leader could rise, the first cracks in the Christian hold on the east began to appear. The northernmost Crusader state, the County of Edessa, was the most vulnerable. Isolated, far from Jerusalem, and bordered by powerful Muslim states, it faced relentless pressure. In 1144, the Muslim ruler Ahmad ad-Din Zenghi, governor of Mosul and Aleppo, launched a campaign to reclaim Edessa. His forces besieged the city, and after weeks of fierce fighting, stormed it. The fall of Edessa shocked the Christian world. It was the first major reversal of the Crusades. The loss of Edessa was more than a military setback. It shattered the illusion of divine favor. In Europe, preachers declared that Christendom must rise again to avenge the fallen. Pope Eugenius III issued a new call to arms, the Second Crusade. The preaching of this crusade was led by one of the most powerful voices of the age, Bernard of Clairvaux, a Cistercian monk whose words could move crowds to tears. He called upon the kings of Europe to lead by example and reclaim the lands lost to Islam. This time, the crusading effort would be led not by nobles or adventurers, but by two kings, Louis VII of France and Conrad III of Germany. The Second Crusade, however, would be plagued by poor planning, conflicting ambitions, and lack of coordination. The grand armies of Europe marched east in 1147, but what awaited them was not divine glory, it was disaster. As the German army crossed Anatolia, it suffered devastating ambushes by Turkish forces. The scorching heat, lack of supplies, and relentless attacks reduced the mighty German host to a shadow of its former self before it even reached the Holy Land. Louis VII's French army fared little better, harassed by the same dangers and crippled by exhaustion. When the two surviving contingents finally reached Jerusalem, they were demoralized and divided. The Crusaders decided to attack Damascus, one of the most important cities in the region and a traditional enemy of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. It seemed a logical target until they discovered too late that Damascus had recently allied with other Muslim powers to resist Zengi's successors. The siege of Damascus in 1148 turned into a humiliating failure. After just 4 days, the Crusaders withdrew, their forces in disarray. The Second Crusade had collapsed. Its failure sent shockwaves across Europe. The faithful began to question whether God still favored their cause. The Muslims, meanwhile, saw the victory as a sign that divine justice was on their side. Out of this new confidence would emerge a figure destined to reshape the balance of power, a man whose name would become legend. Salah ad-Din Yusuf ibn Ayyub, known to the West as Saladin. Saladin was born in 1137 in Tikrit, a city on the Tigris River. He was of Kurdish origin and raised in the service of Nur ad-Din, the son of Zengi. As a young man, Saladin was not known for his ambition or military prowess, but his intelligence, discipline, and piety soon set him apart. He studied law, religion, and the art of war. Under Nur ad-Din's guidance, he learned the importance of unity among Muslims and the necessity of jihad, not just as holy war, but as moral struggle. In 1169, Saladin's destiny changed forever when he was appointed vizier of Egypt. The Fatimid Caliphate, once a powerful Shia state, was collapsing under internal strife. Saladin, serving nominally under Nur ad-Din, took control of Egypt and skillfully consolidated power. Within 2 years, the Fatimid Caliphate was abolished and Egypt was brought under Sunni rule, effectively reuniting the Islamic world's two great centers, Egypt and Syria, under one vision. Saladin proved not only a skilled general, but also a master politician. He forged alliances, quelled rebellions, and built a disciplined army loyal to his cause. By the 1170s, he was recognized as the most powerful Muslim leader in the region. Unlike many rulers of his time, Saladin was known for his chivalry, mercy, and devotion. Even his enemies respected him. Chroniclers in both East and West would later describe him as a man of honor, a rare figure of justice in an age of cruelty. While Saladin united the Muslim world, the Crusader states began to decay from within. The Kingdom of Jerusalem had grown rich and complacent. The knights who once came in the name of God now pursued wealth, power, and pleasure. Internal rivalries among nobles weakened their unity. Kings came and went, often leaving the throne to child monarchs or corrupt regents. It was a kingdom rotting at its core, unaware that its most formidable enemy was preparing to strike. By 1183, Saladin had consolidated Egypt and Syria under his rule and was ready to move against the Crusaders. But before launching a full invasion, he tested their defenses through a series of raids and skirmishes. The Christians underestimated his resolve, believing their mighty fortresses and armies could withstand any assault. They could not have been more mistaken. In 1187, the fateful confrontation came at the Battle of Hattin. The Crusader army, led by King Guy of Jerusalem, set out to relieve the besieged city of Tiberias. Saladin, using the desert and heat to his advantage, lured them into a trap near the Horns of Hattin, a barren hill overlooking the Sea of Galilee. The Crusaders, deprived of water and surrounded by fire and arrows, were annihilated. Nearly the entire army was destroyed or captured, and the True Cross, a sacred Christian relic, was seized by Saladin's forces. The victory at Hattin opened the road to Jerusalem. One city after another surrendered as Saladin's army advanced. By October 1187, Jerusalem itself stood defenseless. But unlike the Crusaders in 1099, Saladin refused to let his soldiers massacre the city's inhabitants. Instead, he negotiated a peaceful surrender. Christians were allowed to leave the city unharmed upon paying a modest ransom. For this act of mercy, even his enemies praised him as a man of extraordinary honor. The fall of Jerusalem stunned Europe. It was unthinkable the holy city, liberated once by God's will, had fallen again into Muslim hands. Pope Urban III is said to have died of grief upon hearing the news. Yet out of that despair rose another call to arms. The Third Crusade would be launched in response, led by three of the most powerful monarchs in Europe: Frederick Barbarossa of Germany, Philip II of France, and Richard the Lionheart of England. But before the new crusade could take shape, Saladin continued his campaign, capturing most of the remaining Crusader strongholds. Only a few coastal cities like Tyre remained under Christian control. These would become the staging grounds for the next great wave of crusading armies that would soon crash upon the shores of the Holy Land. Back in the Muslim world, Saladin's reputation soared. He was hailed as the defender of Islam, the man who restored dignity and unity after decades of humiliation. In Europe, his name became synonymous with both fear and admiration. He was respected even by those who swore to destroy him. Chroniclers marveled that a Muslim leader could embody the very ideals of Christian knighthood, honor, courage, and mercy better than most of their own kings. As the 12th century drew to a close, the world once again stood at the edge of holy war. Europe gathered its mightiest kings for one last attempt to reclaim Jerusalem. The Muslim world, under Saladin's leadership, prepared to defend it with unbreakable faith. The stage was set for one of the greatest confrontations in medieval history. A clash between two titans, Richard the Lionheart and Saladin, that would echo through the centuries. The Crusades were no longer just about religion. They had become wars of identity, pride, and civilization. Both sides now fought not merely for cities and relics, but for the right to define God's will on earth. The First Crusade had been a triumph of faith. The second, a failure of pride. The third would be something else entirely, a test of humanity itself. And as ships began to leave Europe's harbors, carrying the banners of kings and the hopes of millions, the Holy Land once again awaited the march of destiny. The Third Crusade stands as one of the most iconic military campaigns in medieval history, often remembered as a clash between two legendary figures, King Richard I of England, known as Richard the Lionheart, and the great Muslim leader Salah ad-Din Yusuf ibn Ayyub, known in the West as Saladin. Following the shocking fall of Jerusalem to Saladin in 1187, Europe was gripped by grief and outrage. Churches rang bells in mourning, sermons called for vengeance, and kings across Christendom vowed to reclaim the Holy City. Yet unlike the earlier Crusades, driven largely by zealous mobs and minor nobles, the Third Crusade was led by the mightiest monarchs of Europe. In 1189, three great rulers took the cross: Richard I of England, Philip II of France, and Frederick I Barbarossa of the Holy Roman Empire. Each represented the pinnacle of medieval power, but also brought with them pride and political rivalry. Frederick Barbarossa, an old warrior emperor, led a massive army across Europe through Hungary, Serbia, and Byzantium. But tragedy struck when, in June 1190, the emperor drowned while crossing the Salif River in Cilicia. His death caused chaos among his troops, many of whom turned back home. The dream of a united Christian front faltered before even reaching the Holy Land. Meanwhile, Richard and Philip set sail separately for the east. Their fleets gathered enormous resources, and their arrival was anticipated with hope by Christian defenders already entrenched in the region. Yet tensions soon rose between the two kings. Philip was a shrewd and calculating ruler. Richard was fiery, impulsive, and warlike. Their rivalry over territorial disputes in France spilled into the Crusade. When they landed at the besieged city of Acre in 1191, the conflict between them became apparent even as they fought side by side. The siege of Acre turned into one of the bloodiest episodes of the Crusades. It lasted nearly 2 years, with tens of thousands dying from disease, starvation, and relentless combat. When the city finally surrendered to the Crusaders, Richard and Philip argued bitterly over who should control it. Exhausted and disillusioned, Philip soon returned to France, leaving Richard to carry the banner of Christendom alone. Despite this, Richard proved a brilliant commander. He reorganized his forces, imposed strict discipline, and led daring attacks that struck fear into the heart of Saladin's armies. Saladin, meanwhile, was no ordinary opponent. He was a master strategist, known for his mercy, wisdom, and deep religious devotion. His reputation as a noble adversary, even among Christian chroniclers, set him apart from earlier Muslim leaders. His goal was not merely to repel invaders, but to unite the Muslim world under a common cause. He avoided direct confrontations that could risk his army, preferring to wear down the Crusaders with raids and attrition. Yet Richard's march toward Jerusalem showed incredible resolve. After taking Acre, he crushed Saladin's forces at the Battle of Arsuf, one of the most famous engagements of the crusading era. At Arsuf, Richard's cool leadership turned the tide when Saladin's cavalry threatened to encircle his knights. With precise timing, Richard unleashed a counterattack that shattered the enemy lines. The Crusaders' victory restored morale and demonstrated that European arms still commanded respect in the East. However, Jerusalem remained out of reach. The long march south took a heavy toll. Heat, disease, and constant ambush weakened the army. When they finally reached within sight of the Holy City, Richard hesitated. He knew that capturing Jerusalem might be possible, but holding it against a united Muslim world would be impossible. So instead of attacking, Richard negotiated. After years of bloodshed, both he and Saladin sought peace. In 1192, they signed the Treaty of Ramla. It allowed Christian pilgrims safe passage to Jerusalem and secured the coastal cities of the Levant for the Crusaders. While the Holy City remained in Muslim hands, the treaty ended hostilities and brought stability to the region. Richard departed for home, though his journey was filled with misfortune, shipwreck, capture, and ransom. Despite failing to recapture Jerusalem, his courage and chivalry turned him into a legend. Saladin, too, emerged from the crusade with immense prestige. He had defended Islam with honor and restraint, even showing mercy to captured enemies. His death in 1193 was mourned by both Muslims and Christians. The Third Crusade ended not with a decisive victory, but with mutual respect between two of history's greatest warriors. Yet Europe's crusading spirit did not fade. The failure to reclaim Jerusalem ensured that more crusades would follow, each more desperate and less noble than the last. The Fourth Crusade, called in 1202, would forever tarnish the idea of holy war. Instead of marching on Jerusalem, the Crusaders turned their swords on fellow Christians. Due to debts owed to Venetian merchants who provided ships, the Crusaders agreed to capture the Christian city of Zara. Pope Innocent III excommunicated them for this act, but they continued on, lured by greed and politics. Soon, they set their sights on Constantinople, the glittering capital of the Byzantine Empire. In 1204, the unthinkable happened. The Crusaders stormed Constantinople, looting churches, desecrating relics, and committing horrific atrocities against its people. The greatest city in Christendom was burned and plundered by men who had sworn to defend it. They installed a puppet ruler and established the so-called Latin Empire. The Byzantine Empire, weakened beyond repair, would never fully recover. The Fourth Crusade revealed the dark heart of crusading: ambition, corruption, and betrayal masked by piety. Meanwhile, the Muslim world looked on with disbelief. The Christians were now fighting among themselves, proving that greed had overcome faith. Pope Innocent III, horrified by what his crusade had become, denounced the attack, but could not undo the damage. The Holy Land remained untouched, and Jerusalem stayed under Muslim control. The dream of Christian unity died amid the smoking ruins of Constantinople. Over the next century, several minor crusades attempted to reclaim lost ground. The Fifth and Sixth Crusades sought to recapture Jerusalem, but failed due to poor leadership and disunity. In the Seventh and Eighth Crusades, King Louis IX of France, later canonized as Saint Louis, led expeditions into Egypt and Tunisia. Though deeply pious, Louis's campaigns ended in disaster. He was captured by Muslim forces and his army decimated by disease. His death in 1270 marked the twilight of the crusading era. By this time, the world had changed. The Mongol invasions reshaped Asia and the Middle East. Trade routes shifted, and Europe began to look inward. The once mighty Crusader states crumbled one by one, until the last Christian stronghold in Acre fell in 1291. With its fall, the age of the Crusades effectively ended. The dream of a Christian Holy Land was gone forever. The Mediterranean world entered a new age of commerce and diplomacy rather than religious conquest. Yet the legacy of the Crusades endured. They left deep scars across continents, shaping relations between Christians and Muslims for centuries to come. They also changed Europe itself, introducing new ideas, goods, and technologies from the East. The returning Crusaders brought back spices, textiles, scientific knowledge, and a taste for luxury that would later fuel the Renaissance. The Crusades, for all their brutality, were also bridges of cultural exchange. In the Muslim world, the Crusades became symbols of resilience and unity. Saladin's defense of Jerusalem became a legend, inspiring future generations. For Christians, the failure of the later Crusades led to a reevaluation of faith, warfare, and morality. Many began to question whether such wars truly served God or merely the ambitions of kings and popes. The story of the Crusades is not one of simple heroes and villains. It is a saga of faith and folly, courage and cruelty, devotion and deceit. It reveals the best and worst of human nature. From the dusty plains of Jerusalem to the palaces of Constantinople, the Crusades reshaped medieval civilization. They ended empires, created legends, and left behind lessons that still echo today.